Hi everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Connection. I'm your host, Dänna Wilberg. Well, with the shift going on, we need some updates and information, and so we've invited a spiritual teacher, VERONICA LEE, to come and give us some advice on what's going on. So welcome, Veronica. It's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you, Donna. I'm happy to be here.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we launch into this shift that we're in?
Okay. So what's interesting is I was raised metaphysically, which basically meant for me that hands-on healing, meditation, visualization was all part of my growing up. When my mom was in college, she got interested in metaphysics, and so from the time I was little, I would go to her weekly classes and gatherings and learn how to put my hands over people and wait for something. And then as I got older, we would often do visualization to help me shift from being ill to being well, and I was taught that everyone is intuitive. So all of that was pretty normal for me.
Wonderful. Yeah. And how lucky you were. How fortunate.
Yes and no. It was the 70s, and so it was a little odd, honestly. It wasn't like all my friends were doing these things, and I wasn't living in a commune. I was living in the Bay Area, in the heart of the Silicon Valley that wasn't even forming yet. But nonetheless, it was a little awkward to be different, and I just had to learn how to keep what we did at home or what was normal for us sort of out of conversations with friends so that I wouldn't be odd.
Okay.
So, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I was wondering, because I was going to say, it was for most of the people that we've interviewed, it was so hush hush. You didn't talk about it.
Right.
Because you were thought to be really weird or whatever.
Yes.
Well, so that's awesome that you were lucky to have a mom that introduced you and guided you.
Yeah, I felt like it was a really good incarnation, to come in and have that already set and ready to go for me to bring forth what I want to be bringing forth as a spiritual human being.
So, what would you like to offer as far as advice during this spiritual revolution we're experiencing?
Yeah. So what's interesting is that I started, well, like I said, I was a little bit apprehensive about being seen, right, by being seen as a metaphysician growing up. And so I ended up going to school at UC Davis and wanted to just sort of fit in and be a mom and leave it at that. And then my own personal life, I had hit a wall. There was a crisis. And I ended up in a therapist's office and was sort of like, okay, what do I do? My life is falling apart. And she fortunately happened to also be an intuitive, and she said, honey, you're really awake. You need to be out there giving information to people. And that's what shifted me personally from a path of just trying to blend in and be a normal person to really seeing me in a greater light, which is I'm here to bring information. But it's not just me, it's most of us, right? It's a lot of us who are really working to something greater, not just for our personal own experience and joy, but more or less for everyone, for the planet as a whole. So our spiritual evolution is both something that's been, happening in terms of the planet, in terms of the the cosmic energies coming in, but it's also happening within us, and the two are coming together. The people and this shift that's happening on the planet are coming together, and it's time for us to sort of step up and step into who we are. So that's really the biggest piece that I see, is that we are really moving into these higher states of consciousness, but higher states of self.
Now, are you seeing more and more of this in people? Are you actually, other than just experiencing yourself, are you seeing it more and more in people?
I am. What I see, I've been working actively as an intuitive for about maybe 8 to 9 years or so. And in that short amount of time, I have seen a huge shift in terms of people's own individual consciousness. So I am seeing that. The other piece is that as I'm working more with a broader spectrum of people, not just people locally here in the Sacramento area, but globally, what I'm seeing is a huge wave of people sort of coming out and suddenly connecting. So my Facebook is filled with people who are what we would call light workers, people who are really here to, hold the light, to bring forth information. And what's so amazing is that I have clients in, Slovenia and Germany and Barcelona and all over who are really saying, okay, so what am I here to bring? What am I here to do? So that's, it's happening for so many people in so many ways.
That's exciting. You notice even in the media, things are starting to change. Our programming is starting to change. Commercials are starting to change. They're branding things differently with a little bit more softness and spirituality. It's interesting.
It is, except I don't have a television, so I wouldn't know.
Well, okay.
so
I'm telling
I haven't seen
I'm
it,
here
but yes.
to tell you.
Good.
Okay, so it's things are changing, and it just kind of tickles me that something that was so secretive before is now becoming the norm.
It
I
is.
mean, they're advertising yogurt with Buddhas and.
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is that I do see that in terms of, I heard there was a show called Medium that was really popular and such, but I feel that energetically, is that I can see that this huge shift has been happening, and I see it in everyday experiences with what I would call people who wouldn't be necessarily connected to these other thoughts or these other ideas. So I am seeing it in a very real sense. Not so much media because I'm not as connected in that realm, but yes, absolutely.
Well, you talk about tools. There are tools we can use to access our gifts. You want to talk about those?
So, really what I see is that most people use the gifts they already have without even knowing it. So my example is I used to work as an interior designer, and I worked in Sacramento here. And one of the things that I didn't realize I was doing was anytime that there was office politics going on and something was happening between people, the rest of us would sit around and go, psst, 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 and talk about what was going on. But I would always see what was going to happen next, because to me it was, this person's doing this person's doing that. It's obviously going to go this way because this is the patterning, excuse me. And what I didn't realize was I was using my intuitive gifts. And one of my colleagues at one point said, from now on I'm going to listen to what you have to say because you're always right. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. So what I find is most people don't even realize what they're already using. So that's the first thing, is to recognize, in some way what it is you're already using. Sometimes that recognition comes through someone else. So that person saying something to me, or in the case where I ended up at a therapist's office going, oh, my life's falling apart, she said, and she was able to see me in a different way. So going to an intuitive, going to somebody who could see beyond your, I would say your barriers or the way that you've been, acting for so long, helps. And then I also recommend, if not an intuitive, someone like an astrologer or numerologer. And there are other ways as well. We can go into all of them, but I would say keep it really simple and accessible rather than going searching through these crazy caves of who we are, because that can be a little bit overwhelming for people.
Yeah. Plus, you kind of know. You have a gut feeling
exactly
of what's going on. It's just being validated. That's important, I think. So what kind of changes do you see coming once people do step up?
So really what I see is that we are moving through what feels like, and so when you start asking me questions, all this information comes. So it's really hard for me to sometimes talk specifically to the information in words that are palpable and easy for people to understand on a human level. So I do my best to start to bring it in this way. So what I see is that we are moving through time and space at an enormous rate, okay? And of course, in some reality, a metaphysical type of reality, there is no time or space, right? And yet we are going through it because that's part of our agreement to be here in this body and in this form. And we're moving at such a rapid pace that what's happening is anything that's not serving us is sort of being, sloughed off, right? It's like moving away from us. What I see is that in essence, the truth of who we are is emerging. And in that, there is what's left, which is pure joy. Pure joy, pure love, pureness of who we are. So as a collective, as a planet, we are doing this together, moving through this energy field, and so all this energy of what's not us is coming off, and we are moving to a place in which frequencies of love and joy are much more tangible and accessible. So globally, that's huge.
Yeah.
Personally, that's pretty sweet too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, what else do you have to offer?
Yeah. So for me personally, when I see clients individually, I really hone in on 3 different areas. One is, truth. I see people as they are in their authentic self, even if they aren't used to being seen. And then by showing them that, like you said, validating who they are and what their gifts are, they are now able to be empowered to use those, to make those choices consciously. And then, of course, by doing that, we can really align with joy. Because when we can be in service, when we can do what we want to be doing, and when we are using our gifts that are very natural to us, we are shifting into areas that are much more joyful for us as people. But again, it comes through us, so it ends up being a different energy for everybody.
Now you mentioned that, when the thoughts come to you, they come like a download.
Right.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so together, my mom and I teach intuitive skills classes, and she's been teaching for, many years. And what's really funny is that the two of us do things completely different. So when we first were going to teach together, she had her little list of things, and I looked at it and I thought, I don't use any of this. So how are we going to teach this class? And she's thinking, well, I've been teaching it this way for so many years. I don't know how not to. And so we had to have a little bit of a middle ground, which is, here's what I have to bring, here's what you're bringing. So let's teach this way so that people really see that we all do things and receive things differently. So for me personally, and this is a tricky one for many people, it's more of a knowing that the information is just there. And what can be tricky about that is that you can think of it as, oh, that was just my thought. Why did I have that thought? Oh, it's not real, right? We can let it go. Those people tend to be thinkers, and the information comes lightning fast. So if you don't catch it, it's hard to hold on to it and then verbalize it.
Yeah.
There's also seeing. So I will often get images or pictures, and again, I don't actually see auras. I don't see a color around someone. There are people who can. I don't need to. I can just sense, but see more like a dream, a vision of something. So whether it's, oh, I got a picture of, an image or a person, I can describe that. Sometimes I'll hear sounds, and the sounds will be sometimes a ringing or a sentence that's being repeated. Like, don't do that, right? That's a really good one to listen to. Don't go down that road. But I also will hear a sentence sometimes being repeated, like, this is what this person needs.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's almost as if information is coming in so quickly that it's an entire concept, really. One time I was at an event, and it was a workshop with many people. And we came together, and we were all entering into this energy field called the Akashic Records, right? And I thought we were all going to the same place. And the teacher asked a question, and I got this information. And as I was saying it, what I saw was nobody was saying the same thing or getting the same thing. I'm thinking, did I go into the wrong room? What is this? Where am I getting this information? But what was more interesting is that for them, they were almost like frustrated, or there was this anger, let's say, that was coming up about what I was getting, and I couldn't understand that. The sweetest thing is, a friend was with me. She perceived the whole thing through my eyes, so it wasn't just me thinking, okay, this isn't working for me. The next day, it was a couple of day workshop. We went back, and this time I thought, okay, forget these people. I'm not going to deal with this. They don't get me. They don't get what I'm saying. But then, of course, the questions started to come, and the information started to come, and I gave the information. And this time they heard everything I said, and I didn't say anything different. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Well, I had softened, I had opened my heart, right? And one of the things that one of the women said when we went to lunch, she said, I saw when you were speaking yesterday, it was as if this big being, this big person in a white robe, this, sometimes you may call it like an ancient one or a record keeper or something, had a helmet over you and was just feeding you all this information. And she said, but when it came out of your mouth, it felt so sharp and so intense that it physically hurt my body.
Oh my goodness.
And so I thought, wow, I didn't notice anybody behind me. I didn't see all that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was just information. What I recognize is the information I bring has an extremely high frequency. And if you think about a laser, it can be painful, right? It can be very, it breaks up realities.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. In essence, is I break up this reality as it stands in some respect and bring in this really high frequency of joy, of love, of light, of information. It feels very neutral to me, and it just comes and kind of opens up pockets. So whether I'm doing it with a person energetically and answering their questions and showing them who they really are, or whether I'm doing it in a broader sense and bringing information for the collective, it still it still moves through people in the same way.
Yeah.
And the question is whether or not they can open themselves to receive it. And I often have to remember to open my heart to bring it so that
Yeah.
it doesn't feel so harsh. So does that answer your question in this long-winded, crazy
that
way?
was fabulous.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about the Akashic Records in part 2 of the series that we're doing. This is just the first part with Veronica.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got so much to talk about. Yeah, that is very interesting, and it makes, excuse me, personally, it makes a whole lot of sense to me too. And I think more and more people, when they're aware that these fragments of information that they're getting, or these downloads of information, if they would trust them,
Absolutely.
that they are information, they
Right.
are to be acted on, and that it's part of who we are and part of our path. Set a lot of things in motion.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, the hardest part for people is that when we were younger, unlike me, who was saying, oh yes, it was nurtured in me, most people, that's shut down, right? It's like, you don't see that, or that's not true. If you think about it in terms of just our emotions, you have an angry mom coming home and she's just like, and has all this frustration in her, and the little child walks up and says, Mommy, what's wrong with you? Nothing, I'm fine, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that sense of,
Yeah.
oh, my reality is different, it's wrong, right?
Right.
So it's shut down in these very real 3D ways. But as well, if instead we say, Mommy, how come that man has red all around him? Because maybe he's got an aura that the child's seeing, and Mommy doesn't see it. It's like that man doesn't have red all around him.
Yeah.
So again, all these gifts that are really natural for the young person that are really actually quite activated already start to get shut down. So really opening that up is just a matter of re-accessing, re-welcoming that which we already are and that which we already have.
That's so true, very true. And I think now people are starting to raise their children a little bit different, with a little bit more of an open mind
Yes.
towards these things.
Yes.
Yeah, that's super.
Yeah.
So the information comes in lightning speed, and you just the vessel.
Yes. And I have to try to speak a little more slowly a lot of times. And
Believe it or not, I'm actually keeping up with you.
yes, I try really hard because it comes so quickly. But the other thing I find is, let's say I'm working with someone and the information's coming in, but our language is extremely dualistic, right? We have right, we have wrong, we have good, we have bad. We have this, we have that. And what if I'm trying to describe that is neither this nor that? If I'm trying to describe something that is in between this space, in this place of new information, that's extremely tricky. And yet I often can find the way to describe it through metaphor. So if information is coming in, I can often get tripped up in trying to listen, get it, describe it, and then, bring it in a way that can share information with people that is accessible to them in this reality, that they can actually do something with and it feels useful, rather than just going off on these tangents that are really totally out there, or boxing it into the 3D that we know.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah. I think we have a skewed idea of perception or perfection too. And someone in your position, you know, like you said, you go through these normal things. Normal things happen to you. It's part of your experience.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not that, you know, you're going to walk on water now because you're able to access this information, or that it's coming to you.
Yes.
You know, so that's a big misconception. And I think, you know, for some people that may throw them a little bit, and they may not believe as easily or accept what's the information that's putting out there because of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point. One of the things I like to describe people, I write articles for different, you know, publications, and one of the things I often use are the words, you know, spiritual human being, because I really don't feel that we are spiritual beings having a human experience or vice versa. It's that we are this marriage, this beautiful marriage of, you know, spirit and matter, and that we are these spiritual human beings. What I also see is that it's a lot trickier to get your own information, you know, right? Because we are living it, and it's sort of like looking in a mirror. Oh, now I'm seeing that wart on the nose or whatever else. I didn't know that, you know, and we can really get fooled by not ever looking in the mirror, and that mirror is someone else, right? It's harder to see things by ourselves than when we look in a mirror.
Yeah.
So it can be tricky, and again, that idea of perfection can really wreak havoc in, well, it does in so many ways.
Yeah.
One of the things that I say, and you know, sort of one of my little slogan, I'll start with that, which is when I first came up with my business name, which is Sacred Offerings, my tagline was, you know, guidance to access, you know, guidance from your higher self, or something like that, you know. And then I realized, okay, so I don't really want to be a guide, you know, I don't need to be the one that they have to come to. And then the other was, when I use the word highest, it's as if something was better than, something, you know, that who they were wasn't good enough, that having access to this other part was going to be better. And as I started working more, what I started to see was the perfection in everything. And if anybody can just see their own perfection, wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
So then I shifted it to awaken to your perfection, because you are perfect as you are.
Yeah.
And the more you embrace that and accept it and live into that with all your, you know, little shortcomings, if you want to call it that, it's there, it's beautiful, and it's all part of it.
Yeah, it's called character, experience.
Yes.
Well, we're almost out of time, so do you want to give your information?
Absolutely.
So people know how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, well, thank you. So my name is Veronica Lee. I'm an intuitive, a mentor, a spiritual teacher, and I can be reached at my website, which is sacred-offerings.com, and via Twitter, which is @sacredofferings, and on Facebook, my page is called Sacred Offerings, and I'd love for you to join me.
Great. That's super. I love the way, you know, we can reach out in all these different mediums now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're just networking like crazy.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about the Paranormal Connection.
The Paranormal Connection airs the first and third Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our companion show, Story Connection, airs the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. Each episode repeats the following Friday at 1:30 p.m. and Saturday at 5:30 a.m. Watch these programs online at the same air times by going to accesssacramento.org and clicking Watch 17. In the Sacramento region, you can see us on Comcast Channel 17 and on AT&T Channel 99. You can find previously aired shows on the Paranormal Connection YouTube channel. For information on upcoming shows and previous Paranormal Connection guests, go to paranormalconnectiontv.blogspot.com. You can contact us at paranormalconnectiontv@gmail.com. And don't forget, find us on Facebook, become a friend, and become a fan.
So in the couple of minutes that we have left, Veronica, in this part, we're going to be coming back for a second part of the show, and we're going to be talking about the Akashic Records. But to wrap up this portion of the show, is there anything that you'd like to put out there to the audience? Anything you'd like to say? Any advice or words of wisdom?
Yeah. So I would say that really who we are is so much bigger than we could even imagine, that even though I have this information or I know this, it's still hard at times for me to embody it, and yet this is what we're going through together. And so the more that we can sort of pull it in, own it, be it, live it, the easier it is, not just for ourselves, but for the sister that we are bringing along with us, and for the collective as a whole in our planet. So really owning who you are, looking at your gifts, embracing them, that's huge.
Yeah. And the experience, you know, not everybody's experiences is going to be the same.
Absolutely.
You know, we all came down here with a job to do. Am I not right?
Yes and no.
Yeah, yes and no. So we, you know, how we choose to have the experience is not only divine.
Absolutely.
It's perfect.
It is perfect. Yes.
Yeah, even though, you know, and judgment is a big, that's a word.
That is a big word. It's a
That's
big
a
word.
big
And the
word.
nice thing is that in that respect, when we have judgment, if we can just soften into that and go, oh, here I am having judgment, then that helps integrate into perfection, which is really what it is, right?
Yeah.
Accepting, oh, even my judgment is perfect.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Do you have anything coming up? Any workshops or?
So in March, I have a, but we're going beyond March. But anyway, so I'm doing an online, my brain, I can't think of what it is.
Okay, so
do.
people can go to your website and they'll find there. Do you have a like a schedule of things that you're
I
going to
do.
be?
So on my website, yes. On my website, I have a calendar of events, and I offer intuitive skills classes sometimes. I offer Akashic Records classes sometimes. I do various things online and occasionally in person.
Okay,
Yeah.
so these are all online. They're not in up in your area.
Not so much right now.
Okay.
Right now, I have an online intuitive skills class that I'm doing
Okay.
with my mom. That's
Super.
is.
That makes it convenient.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this part one and talking about all these things. It's been a wealth of information, and we're going to continue on. We're going to be talking about the Akashic Records, and for people out there who aren't familiar with it, this is going to be a good little pieces of knowledge that they're going to pick up on the show.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And we just want to say thank you to the crew who came out tonight. We've got Stacy and Ted and Laura and Greg and Lisa. And without them volunteering their time, we couldn't put the show on. So really want to say thank you to them, and a big hug. So with that, we're going to close the show, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks for part 2.